to its eventual downfall. Full disclosure, I never liked the term skeptic. People can be skeptical of anything. Hell, there are even flat earthers that still exist that are skeptical about the earth being an oblate spheroid. Essentially, the whole skeptic community was not even a community. To me, it was a loose confederation of libertarians, like that guy T. MGTOWs, like Raging Golden Eagle, liberals like Sargon of Akkad, MRAs like Dr. Randall McCann, monarchists like Tildeer, alt-lighters like Lawrence Southern, conservatives like Milo Yiannopoulos, and gamers like Mr. Medicare, or back, during Gamergate, he was the internet aristocrat. Most of all, the majority of the schisms were between the atheists and YouTube. In the early days of YouTube before 2010, the atheists on YouTube were united in their own common goal of spreading reason and to give atheists a voice on a fairly new platform. The main battle that you had were against your old guard YouTubers like Christina Rad, Aaron Ross, Seth Andrews, Thunderfoot, Potholer, Steve Shives, Dark Matter 2525, Philip Rose, The Amazing Atheist, and others, going up against Christian YouTubers like Venom Fang X, Tony Miano, Josh Feuerstein, Shock of God, and others, just to name a few. As Christian YouTubers uploaded videos trying to make creationism valid and trying to argue that Christianity is superior in its morality, atheist YouTubers slayed these arguments easily. In response, Christian YouTubers false flagged, abused copyright rules, and even made threats against them. Reason was winning, but this harmony would be broken in the coming years. In 2010, a cleric in Iran declared that women wearing scantily clad clothing were the cause of many earthquakes. In a way of mocking his stupidity, a movement called Boobquake was started by Jen McCrate. It brought a lot of attention and support from various people, and it was a watershed moment for feminism and atheism because supposedly Jen McCrate had noticed misogynistic behavior going on amongst atheists. She felt as if the atheist community was toxic to women, which she did not name specifics and is highly questionable at best. A year later, an event that would start the divide between the liberal atheists and those who embrace social justice. This moment would forever be dubbed Elevator Gate. At the World Atheist Conference, the event was adjourned for the day, and it was late at night, and Rebecca Watson, a feminist science blogger, was on her way back to her room from the bar when someone from the bar followed her into the elevator that led to her room and told her that he found her interesting and was attracted to her. He invited her to his room for coffee, which might have meant he wanted sex from her. She refused, and that is where it should have ended, but not with a drama queen like with the likes of Rebecca Watson. She made a video flaming the guy and treated the incident as a sexual assault, but this would not be the end of her bullshit. She then implicated the entire atheist community as being misogynistic and needed to be reformed. Richard Dawkins responded by essentially showing how inane her incessant whimpering was, and that there are women that are going through real suffering, particularly in the Islamic world. She responded with a boycott of his works, and several of the social justice YouTubers responded by just completely disavowing the guy and calling him an out-and-out misogynist. After this incident, leaders within the atheist community like Richard Carrier suggested that there should be guidelines concerning sexual assault at atheist conferences. People like Thunderfoot and TJ Kirk were to voice their concerns putting these clauses into the event literature. It makes the atheist community look like a bunch of morally bankrupt motherfuckers. Do any other conference, especially religious conferences, do this? No, I don't think so. Also, they were skeptical of the veracity of Miss Watson's claims of sexual harassment and it being an atheist that was, hitting on her in the first fucking place. And for their, it could have just been a patron at the bar and not an attendee of the conference. And for their troubles, they were kicked out of the Free Thought blog, a website ran by P.Z. Myers, who takes zealous stances for social justice. The following year, in 2012, Jen McCrate and others like Richard Carrier started Atheism Plus, a movement that set out to integrate social justice and atheism. It is safe to assume that not everyone was involved with this. You are thinking, why are atheists getting involved with social justice a bad thing. In theory, it does not sound bad. Atheists trying to improve the lot of others is good, but here's the catch. It's not what it is about. Essentially, ideologues like Jim McCreight wanted everyone to swallow what they spat out. If you did not believe what they believed when it came to blacks, gays, trans, in particular feminism or Islam, you are seen as a heretic that needs to be cast out. You're a persona non grata. McCreight thought that atheism was a boys' club that needed to be more diverse, especially straight white males. If you are not a humanist or a feminist, you are not an atheist in their eyes. The big problem with this movement is its intersectionality, which is taking a page of Kimberly Crenshaw's book. They wanted to merge atheism, humanism, race relations, queer theory, feminism, and a whole bunch of other shit into atheism, which atheism should only be about concerning whether God exists or not. Simply put, the majority of atheists do not believe in the existence of a deity, but try telling people like P.Z. Myers that. P.Z. Myers calls people like us dictionary atheists, and we are just the scum of the fucking earth, and we don't deserve to breathe the same air because that atheism doesn't represent his atheist. I'm sorry, P.Z., that atheism in the dictionary doesn't conform to what your idea of atheism is, but tough shit. And that's the only tie that really binds all atheists. Full stop. When it comes down to it, the clowns that were championing this movement essentially never gave up their religiosity, and feminism became their unquestionable god. Any criticism or dissent of feminism was not tolerated at all. Also, any non-atheist would think that this is what atheism was about, and that is not the case. And it should never be the case. You can have conversations about these topics without adopting them wholesale. The movement was about injecting unnecessary dogma into a community that values individualism, and I use the term community loosely because a community of atheists would be like herding cats, and it was merely giving the appearance of giving a shit about issues when it was more about virtue signaling how righteous and moral they are, that they are talking about these issues when really they don't give a shit about these issues in the first fucking place. From this point, atheists like Steve Shives, Tim Blake, Christy Winters, and the one janitor would create the SJW faction of atheists, while Dark Matter 2525, TJ Kirk, Thunderfoot, and others would form the liberal faction, and an ideological war would ensue. In June of 2012, Anita Sarkeesian.
Everything is sexist, everything is racist, everything is homophobic, and you have to point it all out.
Sarkeesian started her series Tropes vs. Women, a YouTube program that discussed how women are depicted in video games. Of course, this would be met with criticism. Sarkeesian would claim that she was being bullied by misogynistic trolls because she was invading the boys' clubs of gamers. What she did not want to admit was that the criticisms were valid. She painted men as if they only saw women as objects and women as if they had no agency of their own. She did not ever value video games as an art, but cherry-picked a few examples from popular video games to point out how misogynistic they are, but nothing deeper than that. She treats gamers as if they are easily manipulated morons that are no better than the whole monkey see, monkey do Pavlovian behavioral device. Her basic bitch analysis of video games causing misogyny are no better of an argument than when the disbarred lawyer Jack Thompson said that video games cause violence. To segue from this, 2014 had an event so controversial that it would solidify the divide between atheists in such a way that it has not been mended together since then, and that would be Gamergate. Gamergate was a term that was jokingly coined by Daniel Baldwin on Twitter when he retweeted a video from the internet aristocrat, now Mr. Medicare, called the conspiracy theory, that documented the collusion between indie game developers and the gaming press. Patient zero for this whole mess was a woman named Zoe Quinn. She was implicated by a former boyfriend of hers named Aaron Gajoni, a journalist in what would be called the Zoe Letter. Gajoni stated that Zoe had cheated on him which ended up being true. Zoe slept with 5 game journalists from Kotaku, including Nathan Grayson, to gain favorable press for her game depression quest. When many, like the internet aristocrat, stepped forward to call out this breach of ethics, just like with the Atheism Plus movement and Anita Sarkeesian, they were met with the same criticisms of misogyny and harassment towards women like Zoe Quinn and Brianna Wu. Quinn was not the only one that did this. Patricia Hernandez was another game journalist who openly admitted on Twitter that she slept with indie game developers and gave them good press for their games. What solidified a conspiracy theory was Milo Yiannopoulos, while working for Breitbart, breaking a story of a server that had the names of all the game journalism sites and published essentially the same article named Gamers Are Dead. Essentially, the article stated that the community of gamers are a bunch of racist, rape apologists, and sexists that just need to die for the better good. Gamergate, more importantly, was also a lash out against social justice activists and feminists trying to infiltrate their hobby and trying to change it to fit their ideological bent. What came out of Gamergate was people of many stripes coming together to combat leftist dogma. Conservatives, MGTOWs, MRAs, gamers, libertarians, and disillusioned liberals all had in common an idea that the rights of individuals should trump collectivist bullshit. Games remained relatively unchanged, and game journalist sites had to list any conflict of interest, whether monetary or personal. Channels like Internet Aristocrat, now Mr. Medicare, Mundane Matt, Total Biscuit, Chris Raygun, and Sargon of Akkad exploded in popularity. That same year, Cenk Uygur interviewed Sam Harris and essentially strawmanned everything that he said. He tried to paint Sam Harris as a closed-minded bigot, and it was the reverse. It was Cenk Uygur who was the closed-minded bigot. This interview showed how obtuse Cenk is, instead of being able to delve into the ideology of Islam. Because Cenk is a regressive, he tries to redirect the conversation towards how bad Christians are. At the same time period, Harris was on Bill Maher's show where they would criticize Islam. Ben Affleck on the panel called them gross and racist for having the views of Islam's barbarism.
So hold on, are you the person who understands the officially codified doctrine of Islam? You're the interpreter of that, so you can say, well, this is...
I'm actually well educated on this topic.
I'm asking you. So you're saying if I criticize you're saying that Islamophobia is not a real thing. That if you're critical of something...
Well, it's not a real thing when we do it.
Right.
Well, no,
it really isn't.
I'm not denying that certain people are bigoted against Muslims as people.
Right.
And that's a problem.
Big of you.
But
why are you so hostile about this concept?
It's gross. It's racist.
Cenk Uygur, Glenn Greenwald, and Reza Aslan would enact a campaign that set out to smear Harris and Maher as Islamophobes. This period in time would lead to, for the lack of a better word, the red pilling of David Rubin. Rubin formerly was part of the TYT network. And the reason that regressives like Uygur defend Muslims is because of the fact that Muslims are a minority in the West, and it is a religion that is practiced primarily by black and brown people. Many atheists turned their back on Sam Harris, while quite a few backed Maher and Harris because of the fact that they were being so unfairly represented in the media. That same year, Melody Hensley, a whiny Twitter feminist, tried to get a soldier disciplined by his commanding officer for disagreeing with her about her supposed PTSD caused by people trolling her on Twitter. Was in the same league as a soldier witnessing someone getting blown to smithereens in combat. If you want to experience the pain equivalent to rubbing honey on your genitals and dipping them in an anthill, then read the article from We Hunted the Mammoth defending her. In 2015, the SJW crowd decided to kick things up a notch and went just beyond making smear videos to actually doing immoral activities. Jim McDermott, Laughing Witch, Bewildered 8, Hannibal the Victor 13, and others went on a letter writing campaign to Thunderfoot's place of employment, his university, trying to brand him a Nazi. While Dick Coughlin was an unhinged, attention-seeking moron that sought to embarrass Thunderfoot by creating a fake web page of his head cut and pasted on a guy masturbating, and also making a fake Twitter account of him saying racist and anti-Semitic things, The aforementioned jerks like Laughing Witch actually went after Thunderfoot's job, his livelihood. This, thankfully, backfired. People on Thunderfoot's behalf made this not, and also took it upon themselves to write a bad review of her place of employment, her husband's company. After her company, owned by her husband, went out of business, she started a GoFundMe claiming that she needed help, but come to find out they had a judgment levied against them for $25,000 that they owed the state of Maryland for a judgment against them. Bewildered Ape shut down his channel. Jenny McDermott, on the hand, doxed Armored Skeptic and JJ Talks and had their channels false flagged, along with Thunderfoot's, TJ Kirk's, and everyone else's. McDermott's place of employment caught on fire, and she was not working at the time. She started a GoFundMe page saying that the whole place burnt down, but only a small portion of it went aflame. She lied when she said that her and her co-workers lost their income, when in all actuality the restaurant she worked at had an insurance policy that paid them while the restaurant was being rebuilt. She lied on her GoFundMe page, and her restaurant fired her because the insurance company was put in a real precarious position. By the way, Hannibal the 13, Victor 13 turned out to be a sex offender. Hannibal the Victor 13 also made threats of violence against Thunderfoot. Speaking of threats of violence, the Bronx blogger, an unhinged turd in the SJW community, got into a Twitter flame war with Jeff Holiday, which triggered the Bronx blogger so much that he posed as a cop, said that he had a gun laser aimed at Jeff Holiday's head, and threatened to call a SWAT team to raid his home. Thankfully, this did not happen, and it ended badly for the Bronx blogger. In 2016, and what was probably the most despicable of the deeds committed was done by the SJW community, was done by John Horse. John Horse was a YouTuber who liked mocking people like Sargon of Akkad. He took the doxes of Justin Templar Sr. and Ozzier. With Justin Templar Sr.'s dox, he acted as if he was him and sent emails to his relatives claiming to be him, and emailed him suicide threats as if he was Justin Templar Sr. himself. With Ozzier's dox, he wrote a torrent claiming to be Ozzier, saying that Ozzier raped his ex and enjoyed it and wanted to do it again. John Horse, being the coward that he was, when caught by Ozzier himself, left YouTube and other social media. What sets John Horse apart from the other cretinous morons in the social justice community is, in fact, that what John Horse did was a crime, which he should have went to jail for. And funny thing is, fat ass Garrett, who is aptly called Jabba the Cuck, ended up promoting his archive page. Whether he knew it or not beforehand, to me, is irrelevant. I think he probably did know. He just was all about pwning his enemies. In mid-2016, the wheels started to come off the tracks. You know, you'd think the skeptic community was finally starting to get ahead here, but you know, their hypocrisy was going to be put on full display. A YouTuber named Harmful Opinions made videos criticizing an app called Candid. Essentially, it was a platform that allowed you to remain anonymous while you shitpost on various threads. The problem is that it would actually shadow ban you from certain threads, blocking anyone from seeing your comments, and also it would sell your data. You know, they possibly could sell your data to anyone that wanted it. Bigger picture, the app was a guinea pig program that sites like Facebook and YouTube would take a page from to enforce all sorts of roundabout ways to censor unpopular beliefs, including shadow banning and demonetizing and putting videos on limited state and censored state and whatever. The worst aspect of this whole debacle was prominent YouTubers rushed to the aid of Bindu Reddy, the CEO of Candid. People like TJ Kirk, Armored Skeptic, Creationist Cat, Shoe on Head, and Mundane Matt advertise Candid on their channels, which is not inherently wrong, but the more shady aspect of this would be when Reddy paid them to defend her. So what happened was TJ Kirk, Armored Skeptic, and Mundane Matt would make videos attacking harmful opinions. They slandered harmful opinions and were being paid to do so, not out of disagreement. These people would be called out for this, and this would be a prelude to their facade of integrity beginning to wane. The fact that they were paid money to go after harmful opinions was just shitty on their part. In that same year, a fissure began to form in the so-called skeptic community when people like Sargon of Akkad would give a ringing endorsement for Donald Trump instead of Hillary Clinton. This alarmed your more left-leaning YouTubers. People like Cult of Dusty would make videos criticizing like Sargon of Akkad, Chris Raygun, and even TJ Kirk for criticizing Hillary and giving soft support for the alt-right, which was not true, and the video showed two things. One, it was a way to divorce himself from right-wingers, even though ironically Cult of Dusty contributed to the Donald subreddit, the most popular page on Reddit. And two, it showed how bitter he was that his popularity had faded into obscurity since he was no longer a voice shaping said community. After Trump was elected and then took office, YouTubers like Pragmatic Progressive, Robin Gething, Spinosaurus Skin, and Creationist Cat started shifting their focus solely on right-wingers and culture warriors like Sargon of Akkad, as they would deem it. The most insidious thing about this is that they tried to get other YouTubers like Kraut and T to join in the fight and align themselves with the cretinous assholes in the social justice community. Spinosaurus Skin and similar tactic used by Dick Coughlin would make a fake Twitter page of Sargon of Akkad as a way of ingratiating himself with the SJWs. It was disheartening for people like Creationist Cat to see conservatives' popularity steadily rise to dizzying heights while their channels have stagnated. The right-wingers like Paul Joseph Watson and Andy Worski were becoming the more dominant voices, and they actually contributed to people within the Skeptic Community TM being pulled to the right of the political spectrum.
Well, imagine my show.
Trailing closely behind the conservatives were a faction of conservatives called the alt-right, a subsector of conservatives that are identitarian to their very nature and to their very core, and this was going to be the catalyst that would send the community to its demise. In 2017, Russian Deadpool, who was part of the Skeptic Feminist channel, shot his girlfriend Heather Annabelle, aka Ivy, while under the influence of shrooms. The day after, V hosted a live chat of this, and Louis Laval, V, and Uzulu joked about it. Thunderfoot got faux outraged and used this as an excuse to leave the Skeptic Community TM. Thunderfoot moral fagged on this and falsely attributed this to Sargon of Akkad and Kraut and T. In that same year, Rage After Storm, a Swiss YouTuber whose channel was exploding in popularity and was promoted by people like Jeff Holiday, made a video titled Race and IQ, where she essentially would say blacks are inherently stupid and would cite things like the Swahili language having only 250 words in its vocabulary as proof that blacks lack abstract thought. Kraut and T, Jeff Holiday, Some Black Guy, and others did a stream criticizing Rage instead of engaging with the actual arguments made. It was a disaster. Kraut contacted a blog called Kipper Central, a UKIP affiliated site that Rage After Storm wrote opinions on. And Rage was let go of her position because of her opinions on race and deleted all of her social media, including her Twitter and YouTube channels. Alt-right YouTubers like Millennial Woes, Braving Ruin, Pale Hominid, and Coach Red Pills made videos criticizing Kraut for this. One creator in particular got under Kraut's skin something fierce, and that was Coach Red Pill. Coach Red Pill did not just criticize Kraut for the way he went after Rage, but also thought that Kraut was faking his accent. This triggered Kraut so much that he started a personal crusade to crush the alt-right. He even started a Discord server with like-minded YouTubers and academics to combat them. In retaliation, a science YouTuber named JF absolutely picked apart any academic videos Kraut made attempting to debunk the alt-right. Another aspect of the server was coordinated by Liz Reptile and Zeph, as they were instructed to gather info on people like JF, Lauren Southern, Red Ice, Millennial Woes, etc. Zeph took it upon himself to blackmail right-wing YouTubers like Sinatra Says, Coach, Red Pill, and JF with their doxes. Kraut knew about this and then tried to make a half-assed, ham-fisted apology, trying to deflect responsibility from himself. The whole point of the server was coordinating a mission called Operation Mincemeat, which essentially aimed to covertly ignite a war between big YouTubers like Thunderfoot and the Sargon of Akkad to make videos against the alt-right. When Kraut was exposed for doing this, including taking part in the doxing of individuals, he deleted his Twitter, Patreon, and YouTube, a total social media blackout. The irony of it is in 3 parts are that he made an hour-long video criticizing people like Spinosaurus for joining forces with SJWs to fight Sargon of Akkad, but only to turn around and ask Spinosaurus to help take down the alt-right. He was once a victim of doxing by atheism's unstoppable fanboys. And lastly, he made a video in the past criticizing the Wall Street Journal for falsely slandering PewDiePie, only to forsake his beefs with the press and invite a reporter of the New York Times to his Discord server. Another important aspect of this server was Based Mama. She was organizing an event named Kilroy, which was supposed to be about free speech. Hypocritically, she asked people like Baked Alaska and James Alsop to speak at Kilroy, only to remove them from the rolls after the people wanting to see them donated their shekels because they thought that they were going to be there. She does not even like the conservatives that were going to speak there, but did not mind taking the money from their fans. Tim Pool, Andy Worski, and others eventually pulled out of the event because of the non-disclosure agreement and the 3-year no-compete they were supposed to sign. The Kilroy Twitter page also promoted Kraut's server. The event was eventually canceled. On the SJW side, Steve Shives wanted to do a counter event to Mythos' Milwaukee and Kilroy called the Atheist Conference that had Christy Winters, the one janitor, and Foxy Jezebel on the panel. A nice little echo chamber, if you might say so. Shives wanted no dissent whatsoever, and he even made it apparent to Lee Moore, the event organizer. They name-dropped and could not deliver, just like Kilroy. They got money from a bunch of suckers, and ultimately they couldn't deliver. In closing, this has been the longest video I have done in a while. It shows that in each era that I mentioned, the ones that lost the battle of ideas ended up using underhanded tactics to try to silence their opponents, only for it to backfire on them. The skeptic community, as I predicted, would be split from its seams because of its alliance with right-wingers, steadily pulling them to the right side of the political spectrum. Sargon of Akkad is now trying to pick up the pieces and reform the Skeptic Community TM and rebrand them to liberalists. Just like with any confederation, each group will act in their best interests. Currently, you have people like Mr. Medicare battling with MRAs like the Honey Badgers, Dr. Randall McCam, and Karen Strawn, while Cult of Dusty is still obsessively continuing his crusade against primarily TJ Kirk. And also, every liberal YouTuber and those that don't like the right-wing side of what was the skeptic community are going after these super chats that are taking place, like Internet Blood Sports with Andy Worski, the Kumite on Tonka Sauce channel, and Baked Alaska's live stream, which are exploding in popularity, but yet do not have any kind of structure on their show. It's just a good shit show to watch. And it made me think of a couple of things. Does every group that starts out with good intentions eventually become the monster that they crusaded against? And does being individualistic handicap you from gaining strength as a collective would be more advantaged in doing so? The divide will not mend as ideologues are still vehemently preaching that the aim of atheism is social justice like P.Z. Myers still is. YouTube atheists made me realize that what I was thinking was valid, especially being from Mississippi, which is probably the most conservative and most religious state in the union, and the poorest and the fattest, and has the highest prescription drug abuse, etc., 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 and the highest teen pregnancy rates. And the skeptics helped me see the hypocrisy of the left and the social movement, justice movement itself. And it made me realize, as an atheist, I don't necessarily have to be a left-winger. I don't have to be a liberal to be an atheist. To put a bow on this, no person nor should any group be elevated to God status. Inscrutability in communities aren't as good as the strength of their values. Thank you for listening and to this long-winded video, and I hope to make another video and to have you into your homes. Thank you so much, and Shadley.